We have identified some very, very interesting anomalous type of aircraft.
The traffic is quite luminous and is exhibiting some non-ballistic motion. Over.
Move very rapidly at any speed or whether any direction it wanted to go. Why it could change and go to the right or the left or go crossways without hesitating a bit.
What do you think it was?
Well, if they call it a flying saucer, that's what it is.
EWA 517, do you want to report a UFO? Over.
Negative. We don't want to report.
Look, it wasn't my worst Wednesday night.
Good evening, everybody. This is Smiles Lewis, and you are tuned in to another live edition of Anomaly Now, live from Austin, Texas. I already said my name, and we are the weekly news roundup show of the nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka Anomaly Archives, based here in Austin, Texas. And I'm so glad to be with you tonight. Thank you for joining us wherever you may be, whether you're listening to this live or in the archived vodcast, podcast, whatever form you see or hear it in at whatever time in the temporal stream that may or may not actually be flowing. It looks like our good friend Mark Jackson is not going to be making it with us tonight, but I appreciate you all tuning in, and hope that we can keep you interested and occupied for the next 30 minutes. So as usual, you can keep track of everything Anomaly Archives related by stopping by the AnomalyArchives.org website. And there you'll find a link to our Flipboard where we aggregate all of the anomalous news that may or may not be fit for print, since it's not actually print, it's ones and zeros across the Ethernets and into your mind through your eyes. And maybe some of you through your fingertips if you happen to be blind and use Braille. I say that because in my day job, I work for a fantastic government program that provides free reading material to the blind and print disabled. And you know what? A lot of people get their information differently than you or I, not necessarily through the medium of the eyes or the ears, but through various other alternative reading methodologies like Braille. I'll share with you one time, I was at a happy hour with some staff members, and one of our coworkers who is blind and is a patron was sitting next to me, and every once in a while she would interact, but I noticed she seemed a little preoccupied, and at some point I realized that under the table, out of sight, she had her little wonderful Braille device that was about, yay big. And I leaned over and said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm reading Wired magazine right now." And she was reading an article on the wired.com website through her Braille embossing technology that was connected to her cell phone. And I was so like, wow, that's really, really cool. And it reminded me of another incident where I learned about how a good friend who is also blind, who is an amazing public speaker, and he early on in our friendship, I discovered that whenever he would speak, he would look at the audience wearing his glasses, and of course they knew he was blind, and his hands are moving on the podium, but he is reading from a prepared speech in Braille, but never had to look down, and it wasn't like he was reading a teleprompter. He was just looking straight ahead. Anyway. Welcome again to Anomaly Now, the Anomaly News Roundup for the Anomaly Archives. And over at Flipboard, we've got a variety of news links. And I know that we've referred a number of times over the past couple of months that we've been doing this show. We started back in September. And of course, one of the subjects that has been on a lot of people's minds who are paying attention to what's going on in the political world is the name QAnon and the conspiracy theories that surround that topic. Recently, my wife urged me to read an article written by Charles Eisenstein at his charleseisenstein.org website called "From QAnon's Dark Mirror hope. And I posted this on my personal Facebook page recently with some quotes that the author Charles Eisenstein, used to talk about the gist of what this article is all about, is trying to get beyond the polarized political views that have brought us to this weird, tense point in American political history. And while we are not advocating any particular political view on this show or as part of our nonprofit activities, because that is illegal and not what the aim of this organization is all about, we do, of course, honor and respect among individuals with differing viewpoints. And so I would like to read from this article by Charles Eisenstein from QAnon's Dark Mirror Hope, where he quotes Dr. Martin Luther King, which, of course, some of you out there, I'm sure, were celebrating or had the day off, perhaps, because of the national holiday associated with his birth, life, and passing. Hate is the result of a narrative hijacking anger and channeling it onto convenient enemies. Hate preserves the status quo. Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "Somewhere somebody must have some sense. Men must see that force begets force. Hate begets hate. Toughness begets toughness. And it is all a descending spiral, ultimately ending in destruction for all and everybody. Somebody must have sense enough and morality enough to cut off the chain of hate and the chain of evil in the universe. And you do that by love." He goes on, "Like an unchecked cancer, hate corrodes the personality and eats away its vital unity. Hate destroys a man's sense of values and his objectivity. It causes him to describe the beautiful as ugly and the ugly as beautiful, and to confuse the true with the false and the false with the true. Please meditate on these words. It looks to me like such a cancer is spreading in America, with precisely the effects on its national personality that King predicted." Now, I would urge folks to go to the Flipboard and to read this article. It's from December, just a month ago, and it touches on a number of different topics. But as I say, its ultimate aim is to help us all take a step back and hopefully think, meditate, reflect on the times that we're in, and to hopefully find a new way forward. One that doesn't malign the other's viewpoint, that attempts to try to find middle ground, and that tries to come to grips with this thing that's now being a pejorative and an epithet called conspiracy theory. I am a conspiracy theorist. I absolutely know, just like you do, that conspiracies do exist and that they erode all that is good in life. They involve the ideas of cover-up and corruption, ideas that are no stranger to those seeking the truth as often as we do through the jaundiced lens of our own biases and filters. To go on to quote from that Charles Eisenstein article, what I am saying is that some of the claims that weave through the conspiracy narrative merit attention. The delusional nature of the narrative does not invalidate all of its threads, and we should not dismiss everything conspiracy theorists say just because they said it, especially when our information gatekeepers malign and suppress genuine dissent as conspiracy theories, disinformation, and Russian propaganda. Starting in 2017, the U.S. government issued a series of disclosures of numerous UFO sightings by trained military observers, sometimes accompanied by video. Basically, it confirmed a theory that it and the mainstream media had for decades vigorously ridiculed as the province of cranks, crackpots, and conspiracy theorists. This revelation joins numerous other publicly acknowledged government and corporate conspiracies: COINTELPRO, Operation Paperclip, Iraqi weapons of mass destruction, Iran-Contra, the CIA's running of drugs into American inner cities, the FBI's sabotage of civil rights groups, and many more. Despite this record, the media and government pretend all this is in the past, and they are not today deceiving the public in service to their own power. Come on, people. Can we exercise a bit of skepticism when it comes to the narratives of established power? Unquote. the author, Charles Eisenstein. So again, don't want to go too much into that. I think that's enough of quoting from that article. I would urge you, if this strikes you as interesting and important, to check that out. Again, that's at charleseisenstein.org and is titled "From QAnon's Dark Mirror Hope." Now, interestingly enough, moving along to an article from 2 months earlier, from an interesting source, azcentral.com. This is the Arizona Republic website. There was actually an in-depth exploration of conspiracy theorist, UFO researcher, and all-around curmudgeonly crank from era past. How William Cooper, in his book, Behold a Pale Horse, planted seeds of QAnon conspiracy theory. Now, this is a pretty amazingly in-depth article from Richard Rulis and Rob Odell of the Arizona Republic, again, published October 1st, 2020. And it's a really great overview of Cooper. If you are not familiar with him, count your blessings. But he was a staple in the 1990s UFO scene and conspiracy scenes. And his seminal text, Behold a Pale Horse, which my friends always referred to as Behold a Pail of Horse Hockey. You get the drift. It was a very crankish, crackpotish conspiracy tome that is amazingly popular even today. The authors of this article did a wealth of investigation, went to the site of Bill Cooper's home in Eager, a little small town, and now I'm forgetting what state it's in, but there's a lot of interesting little factoids in there that either I was unaware of or the details of or had forgotten. And one of those is that the paranormal UFO crank publisher, Gray Barker. Gray Barker is synonymous with the Mothman flap phenomenon and was a publisher on all these strange subjects, published one of the first books on the Men in Black. And he published, quote, Barker published a Cooper essay in 1984 that gave the broad outlines of an alien outreach and the military's effort to hide it from the public. So that alone, I don't remember ever being aware that Gray Barker was helped spark William Cooper's drive into the UFO literature arena, the ufology community. Somebody who I knew was associated with Cooper in the early 90s UFO scene was Norio Hayakawa, who for a long time has espoused mostly religious Christian-based interpretations of the UFO phenomena, but also seemed, from my readings, to often parrot some of Cooper's ideas before they became less extreme and radical. But we discover in this article that Norio Hayakawa helped set up Cooper's first speaking gigs in the Los Angeles area. Interesting little detail. He also goes on to say, Cooper's lectures were dark, Hayakawa said, compared with the relatively lighter fare of abductions and sightings the UFO community was used to. Now, I find that rather humorous, and anybody who's read more than one abduction book, and really even if you've only ever read one abduction book or seen one documentary, or perhaps the movie Fire in the Sky, not an accurate representation of Travis Walton's experiences, know that to call the abduction milieu in the UFO community as lighter fare seems a bit of a stretch. But it is certainly true that one can read in Cooper's progression into the more militia-oriented community, more right-wing conspiracy-oriented community during this 90s period. Certainly was adding a darker aspect to it. But this was not, he was not alone in this. And in fact, if you go to the Anomaly Archives website or come to the actual Anomaly Archives when we have a new location, which we don't yet. But when we do, you can come and see copies of a book that was published by a Texas author out of Del Rio, Texas, called Mind Control Wars. And Mind Control Wars was subtitled, "They Promise Immortality Using New Human Alien Technologies That Could Trigger the Apocalypse." This is by a Texas author named Bernie Nelson, who had also published a newsletter focused on mind control, alien abduction, and New World Order themes. The very same themes that William Milton Cooper was often talking about in his book, Behold a Pale Horse. Now, Cooper would eventually, as the article suggests, and others have pontificated upon, really switched gears from believing what he says he believed, that the documents he had allegedly been shown when he was in the Navy that seemed to show that there were these alien races and that the United States government had been in collusion with them, and that the military was basically standing down and allowing Americans and humans across the globe to be abducted and cattle mutilated and so on and so forth. Now, the article doesn't really go into this, but it does, again, point to this idea that he eventually disavowed all that and came to the conclusion, maybe it was predestined and it was all a ruse to begin with, but that at some point he espoused that that was all meant to be propaganda for this New World Order, and that all those talk of New World Order conspiracies was still true, but that the alien aspect of it was going to be a ruse. Now, there's so many different things in Behold a Pale Horse that we won't be talking about, other than to say there's a lot of stuff in there. It was, as most people have commented, not really a significant tome in terms of the material in it being written by Cooper, but rather a collection of conspiracy-related documents of various, provenance. One of the more interesting and weird chapters is about a document that was claimed to have been discovered inside of an abandoned, bought at a auction or something house, a Xerox machine. And inside the Xerox machine was this document that somebody had been presumably making copies of. I think there are various other versions of the story, but basically the document in the Xerox machine was titled something like "Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars." And it purported to be a kind of cybernetic analysis of how to enslave humanity through just regular economic processes and pressures. The kind of thing that appeals to many of us who feel oppressed, or like that there's some, as the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy says, that sense of foreboding and paranoia that, well, that's just natural to everybody and every sentient creature in the universe. And that everything's out to get us. So that perhaps then, as the article goes on, and this has also been noted by the biographer of William Milton Cooper, his book Pale Horse Rider, that led to incarcerated African Americans particularly being fans of this Behold a Pale Horse book, and several references to this book and to Bill Cooper working their way into hip hop and rap songs. And many people who are aware of all these different topics, of course, can chart the significant portion of the rap and hip hop world that are obsessed with and work all this Illuminati imagery into their songs, and then there's, of course, all these conspiracy theorists who are then analyzing all that and think that then somehow those rappers are in on it and part of the conspiracy, spreading these symbols of the masters of the world. And of course, the original edition of Behold a Pale Horse contained a chapter that was in fact a reprinting of the infamous, terrible Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, a long-known anti-Semitic tract, conspiracy tract designed to trigger genocide against a people. And the publisher of the book, who is also interviewed for this book, for this article, for over at AZ Central, I forget the name. Is it New Dawn or Inner Dawn or Inner Light Publications or whatever? But she comments that this book didn't start off as a very popular seller, but at some point it really took off, and she prints 1,000 or 2,000, I guess, new editions every year, and it's constantly in demand. And sure enough, many people looking at the QAnon material or the Wilton Bill Cooper, Behold a Pale Horse material have noted similarities between those two sets of conspiracy theories, mainly just this idea of an Illuminati and a New World Order and that sort of thing. Obviously, that does not invalidate those ideas. It just tends to make them easily written offable, if that's even a word. But it should be noted that the publisher has since excised that chapter in all the future editions. So I'm not sure when exactly she started redacting that, but probably a good idea. But there are a lot of really strange aspects to the Bill Cooper story, not least of which was also his weird connection to Timothy McVeigh, the Oklahoma City bomber who was executed after being convicted of that crime. And the article mentions that as part of the investigation into the bombing, an FBI agent visited Cooper in September 1996. Cooper told the agent that he couldn't be sure if he had ever talked to McVeigh, as he received so many phone calls. Though he told the agent a tale of two mysterious men, one of whom looked like McVeigh but taller, who visited him several months before the bombing. They told him to watch out for something in Oklahoma City, Cooper said, unquote. Wow. For those of you at all versed in the JFK assassination lore and in general covert operations and that sort of thing, this might sound a little familiar, like the tales of the alternative multiple Lee Harvey Oswalds that were conspicuously seen at the various locations, as if to establish their existence as danger points in upcoming events. Make of that what you will. The story, of course, is very sad in its ending, but not surprising, and that is that in the descent of William Milton Cooper's, Bill Cooper's mental state, that he seemed to be engineering his own eventual martyrdom in a suicide by cop type of situation. Apparently, he claimed on his show, he had various radio shows, including a shortwave radio show. That's really how he became so widely known in the militia movement. And to some degree, kind of was mirroring what would eventually happen with shows like Art Bell, which, of course, originally were more paranormal oriented, but now are definitely much more conspiratorially oriented. They resisted that drive for a long time, but apparently on his show, The Hour of Our Times, I think is what it was called, Bill Cooper had been claiming that he had sent his wife and children out of the country in anticipation of some big event that he always claimed was coming, that was going to involve the murder of patriots who would not submit to the coming totalitarian police state. And after he, in talking to some of these FBI agents, told them right out in front that he was not paying his taxes, he was audited, and he had not actually sent away his wife and children, but rather probably his drinking and paranoia and belligerence had made them leave. His wife had left, moved to California, taken the kids with her. But the story became very sad when one of his local friends in the small town, I believe his name was Glenn Jacobs, eventually called the cops on Bill when he had come to visit him and seen, I guess Jacob says that Bill came to the door without a shirt on and presumably was drunk. Jacobs apparently was interviewed by Alex Jones and others. And there's a whole other aspect of this story that we won't have time to get into. But anyway, he called the cops on Glenn, and because he actually thought he feared that his friend, I think at this point they might have already been estranged as friends, but that he might have that Bill might have killed his wife and children. Of course, he did not. But ultimately, he was killed by local law enforcement after he had followed a man off of his street and to his home and held a gun to his head and threatened him. And Bill had been for a long time posting and emailing people claiming that, or not claiming, but setting himself up as a martyr. And he ultimately did die in a confrontation in a hail of bullets with, I believe, local sheriff's deputies, officers. And he shot back and hit at least one or two of them who were gravely wounded. So there's a lot more in the article. There's so much more to this story, not least of which is, as I started to allude to, this rivalry between him and another radio-based conspiracy theory host, Austin's own Alex Jones. And they are both very widely known as having predicted the September 11th, 2001 attacks. Their feud is pretty legendary as well. But one of the other interesting aspects of this story is that it's part of an Arizona Central investigation into the right-wing militia movement in Arizona. And there are quotes and pictures of Q Shaman. Yeah, that's right. The guy with the bison head and spear or whatnot, and the tattoos who made it into the siege-riddled Capitol a few weeks ago, that now has become such an icon for that insanity. Well, we are very close here to the end of the show. I'll probably post links to that Mind Control Wars article, as well as one of the other strange aspects of the William Cooper saga is his talking about mass shootings, school shootings, and the idea that this was all part of a program created by the secret government to take away the Second Amendment through the use of mind-altering drugs, hypnosis, mind control, and again, mass shootings. It's often referred to as Project Orion or the Orion Protocol, I think. And its message made its way into a very wide array of New Age websites of the time. So that's going to be, I guess, about all we have time for. I would also urge folks, if you can support the Anomaly Archives with a tax-deductible donation, it would be greatly appreciated. We are a 501c3, and if you want something for your money, you can go to our merch store, which is linked off of our AnomalyArchives.org website. I recently got some samples of the merch that's available. That's the artwork done by our good friend RPJ Red Pill Junkie, who is actually Miguel Romero. This is a coffee cup focused on one aspect of the entire poster. This is the mouse pad that's got the entire poster there. And of course, my new shirt. Oh, I love it. Love this new shirt. Love this artwork. RPJ Miguel did a fantastic job. And I think we even have right here a little, you can get some close-ups of it. Check this out. And I'll go ahead and say good night. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next week. Take care, be safe, and try to get along. Try to walk in each other's shoes a little, and maybe we can make this world a better place. Thanks.
Behold the Anomaly Archives poster. Gaze upon its magnificence. But please keep it down, for there is Shashi the alien. Do not be alarmed. But who is that mysterious MIB digging deep into the files? Steady your gaze. Patty the cryptid is elusive, and to catch even a faint glimpse is quite an achievement. Thrill at the horror of a living challenged apparition who has stopped by to study a forgotten tome. Elsewhere, scattered about, The keen eye will observe artifacts of sacred and forgotten lore. After a long gaze one may grow envious and wish to possess a physical manifestation of this grand visage. What once seemed like an insurmountable expedition is now made into an effortless side quest. For now, at the Archives shop, one can find this thrilling representation available for acquisition, where, among the usual wares, denizens of this fair land will find this and other scrolls, exquisite apparel, hot beverage drinking vessels, and a plethora of other treasures. Enough to satisfy the desires of any who seek the most elusive emotion of all, fulfillment.
Good night, folks.